So it's a little bit of a scrunched workspace today, but we're going to try to work on prompts 10 through 23 of the December Daily Art Candy from Anne Livingston. Now, some of her prompts were, or her daily sharing was more of a resource. So I'm going to link to her videos below. And I'm really focusing on two of the prompts here sort of in one. In one of the videos, she talked about unique tools and she showed off some different palette knives like these. So I figured I would try actually just using these to sort of block out a painting, and then I would finish it off, and I'll be using acrylic paint for that. And the other prompt was to try something new. So this kind of covers two in one. And in some ways, I'm glad that not every day was a prompt for me to actually create something, because I think I would be feeling really overwhelmed right now. So again, she had a lot of great resources, and I will link to those videos below, and you can check out her resources. It was things for pigments, interesting art movies to watch, resources for Getty Images, where they had a free library of items that can be used for references, things like that. So look for that link below, and let me see if I can get her to move so I have a little more space. If not, I'll just try to work in the space that I have. It's a little chilly this morning and everyone wants to be close, so we'll see how long the snuggling takes before I can actually get to work. Okay, so I finally have my desk, and what I want to do is to sort of flesh out the shape of a face using the palette knife and these two colors. Because the paint's thicker, it's probably going to need to dry a little bit in between the different layers. This is something I've wanted to try for a while, and I've just never quite done. See, now this makes me want to buy a bunch of different palette knives. The goal here is to just sort of shade and just block things out, and then I'll come back in with maybe a fine line brush or a paint marker and add in some of the finer details. Go a little bit here. And again, it's not going to be perfect. Let's see. And that mix a little bit to grab a rag and clean this off between the colors. Let's see if I can try this one, and I'm just going to try to block out a shape here for the lips. And I am not taking my advice and letting it dry between layers, so who knows what this is going to do to it. Let's let some of this color mix in here a little bit. Tiny bit here. I probably should have used a palette, but I'm just kind of winging it today. Sort of just take some of this and make a bit of a neck here. Just letting it mix. I guess if I wanted it more defined, I could do some of this in layers, like I was saying. Let it dry in between each layer. I'm kind of liking what it's doing. All right. So make sure this is clean before I dip into the white. This is just a giant jar of cheap white paint that I use for mixing. Cheap white is fine for mixing, but if you want really good effect, you usually want to get something better quality. This definitely I should have waited for it to dry. Get the space for the eyes there. Let's see. Let's a little bit dry it out. Okay, just kind of layer it on like icing. Using a palette knife always reminds me of icing a cake. A little bit too thick here. And not thick enough here. There we go. It's going to probably take a long time to dry before I can do the detail work because it's really thick. Let's just take a little bit of this in here, mix it through a little bit. All right, and now for the hair. And I like to just let parts of it scrape away a little bit and get some of the highlights. And I haven't done a lot of work like this with a palette knife, so it's just something I kind of wanted to experiment with here. We go. So I've got the basic shape blocked out. I'm going to let this dry for a while, and then I'm going to come back in and add some more detail because some areas are really, really thick. It's probably going to take a while to dry. See if I can, probably mixing that too much and losing some of the white, but that's okay. All right, let's let it dry, and I need to quit messing with it. So I'm going to revisit the prompt to use unusual tools. I'm going to use this chopstick to add some more detail to the painting. It took a while for this to dry because the paint was very thick, and I did come back in and put a little more white over the tops of the eyes. I'm going to use black drawing ink here, and I've poured some into this little jar. I think it used to be a mustard jar. And I'm not really going to be fussed or worried about perfection with this. I'm just trying to play and see what develops. And I think I was just watching a video where someone was talking about how when they're kids, when we're little, we're not really considering, art. We're not making art. We're just there kind of enjoying ourselves. And I think that that is something that we need to remember within our own art practice, because when we forget that, we really limit ourselves and our creativity. And we get so focused on making something that is perfect, or that we're so busy worrying about rules. I'm not saying we should completely discount rules of any kind when we're painting, but we get so caught up with it that we forget to just play and enjoy ourselves. So that's kind of what this is today. And I don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't know if this is going to be any good or not, but I'm not worried about that. And a lot of the art that I do, especially in my sketchbook, I'm working that way, and not worrying about making something that is good or perfect. Now, the one thing about also working on something like this where it is it's something with a lot of texture is you're going to have a lot of bumps, I guess you'd say, for lack of a better phrasing, in your piece. So you'll notice, like on the eye, it's not a perfect round circle and spots. But this is just a great exercise. It's helping me to paint and be really loose. And the thing about stuff like this is over time, you may find that you're actually working and creating something that is halfway decent. The first one's maybe horrible. But that's what happens in art. You make a lot of bad, horrible stuff. But overall, I'm okay with the way that this has fleshed itself out. I'm going to need the ink to dry, and then I'm going to decide if I'm going to leave this as it is or add a little bit to it. And again, I'm kind of glad that some of Anne's prompts were resources because I've had so much going on lately. I have managed to be creative daily, but I'm not working on any major projects right now. So let's just let that dry, and I'll think about if I'm going to leave it finished or if I'm going to come back and do a few more details with it. Okay, so here is the final page. I was going to come back in and add a little more detail. I used the colored pencils here and I put in a little more color, but it's just not quite doing what I want, and I'm ready to move on to something else. I am glad that I experimented with this and that I tried a couple of different tools. I'll probably go back to loosely drawing with ink and with this chopstick in the future. Getting a little more help in the studio again this morning. Anyway, it's on to the next prompt, and I will see you in the next video.